Hello, and welcome back to Engineering Improvisation. Here we are getting back on the Chevelle, so stay tuned. Okay, so now it's been a while since I've done anything, at least on YouTube, regarding the Chevelle. That doesn't mean that I haven't been working on it. I've been working on it quite a bit. Thing is, it's been a lot of little stuff that it's hard to film, wasn't going to show up very good. I didn't have time to film, I just had time to do the work, or a bunch of piddly little stuff that just wouldn't have been interesting. So I know I've done some update videos before, that's pretty much what this is going to be, but there is more coming. In fact, this give you an idea of something else that is coming up. So we'll get to that later. But for now, let me go ahead and switch back over to first person and give you the update. You know what? Get a little bit ahead of myself. So before I do the update, I know that I have only a few subscribers, so 99% of the people who watch any of the videos are first timers or have only seen a couple of videos. So let me kind of recap on some of the background on this car. I'll try and keep it brief. But you can tell that it is a 70 Chevelle, 2 headlights. And so this car, I have a lot of history on. I won't go into all the details, but this was my brother's pride and joy for 30 years. No kidding. And unfortunately succumbed to cancer. And so the car did end up coming here with me. And he was pretty well through a restoration then before he got sick. So as I was picking up the car, doing my best working through that, it was, now the paint and body was done, the drivelines in the car, and it was complete. Wasn't running that great. Transmission was, I mean, it's been rebuilt. It's a good transmission, TH350. It's got all the good stuff in it, so it can handle this, supercharged 400 that's in here. But the interior, aside from the driver's seat and most of the dashboard, interior was completely gutted. And as much as me and my friends and family searched, we could not find all the parts. So putting a puzzle together when you didn't take it apart, oh, and yeah, all the screws are missing. So that's been fun too. I have no fasteners for the interior of this car. So yeah, it's been a long road, and it's another reason why some things I haven't been filming, because I'm scrambling for parts. So what am I missing? I have no idea until I get into this car. I mean, I have a lot of history with the car, don't get me wrong, but again, when you didn't take the whole thing apart, you have these buckets of pieces, and I don't know where it went to. But I'm figuring out as I go that the buckets of parts and the piles of parts are slowly diminishing over time. Then I kind of figure out what I have left. So that kind of gives you that background. Now we'll go first person, and I'll catch you up on what I've done since the last video. Okay, starting here in the engine bay. So you are here, and if you want to catch up on some of the stuff I'm doing in between, you can also find me there. Oddly enough, this is starting to receive more following than this. So yeah, if you want to see the background stuff, all stuff's going on in between, that's a good place to go. And of course, you see I kind of cobbled together a hood prop because 52-year-old hood hinge springs, that's why. So those are on the list. That's not a real high priority. Obviously, I have other things I gotta worry about. What else? Oh yeah, little stuff. And I'm trying to remember from the last video, I think I talked about how I ventilated the blower. That's been a really good addition, kind of an aha moment. I did do a filter lid, because this is a deep drop base. So I just had a hunch, because when I would have this thing apart, the lid, the bottom of the solid lid that was on here to the top of the carburetor was, I don't know, 1.25 inches. And as much air as this thing's pulling, it just felt like that was going to be a choke point, because it's not, you have a lot of air coming through a small space. Focus. Okay. So I thought the filter lid would be a great idea. Then doing my homework, Engine Masters actually has some really good series on YouTube where they do engine mods on a dyno. So, you know, no kidding, real world results. So happens that they did their air filter shootout on a pretty hot cammed small block 383. Well, this is I would say a mild cam small block 400 with the blower. So this engine's probably making about the same amount of power that high revving 383 was on their dyno. And sure enough, they put a filter, and their filter base, by the way, was flat. It wasn't a drop base. So a little bit of difference there. But they put, even with that, they put a filter lid on and gained, if I remember right, like 5 horsepower. But for me, just switching to that lid, I mean, the throttle response was just so much better almost instantly. So that tells me this engine's really breathing a lot better with that. So highly recommend. Oh yeah, I built, this is a long time ago, I built a bracket to hold this coolant reservoir bottle, and it was fine, but it was just barely rubbing the upper radiator hose. So, you know, I didn't like that. I didn't want it vibrating and potentially rubbing notches in the hose. So I did redo this, drop it down 1/2 inch, 5/16, something like that. Yeah, but you can see my finger. There is a gap, so it is clear, and a little tight, but I can get my fingers in there and take the cap off. So that's all done. Let's see, other stuff in here. Oh yeah, I did open breathers on the valve covers. I've been chasing oil consumption on this engine since day one, and talking to some of my brother's good friends, they were saying he was having an issue with that too, that he'd been trying to track down. So as I've been going through it, this had a breather PCV system on it, and there's nothing wrong with the PCV valve, but the line from the PCV up into the carburetor was full of oil. Even though there's baffles on the valve covers, it was just still, there was so much volume of air being pulled through the engine, it was still just sucking in oil out of the rocker area. So I just went to the open breathers to help try and solve some of that. Oh, and with that, I mean, if it wasn't this set, I mean, this set is something that I bought recently, and my brother must have been onto something, because I was digging through his parts. I found a set of new intake gaskets, and I thought, oh, I'm not going to need those. This is a fairly fresh engine, and it is. So I didn't bring those with me, because I just couldn't bring home everything that I need to bring home. Long story. But now, thinking back on it, now that I've done tons of diagnostics, which I'm not going to bore you with, the fact that he had those gaskets laying around, I think he was kind of onto the same thing I kind of stumbled onto. So I think the bulk of the oil consumption out of the intake gaskets are bad, and it's sucking in oil through the lifter valley. But again, I'm gonna have to really do a teardown. I plan on making a video about that. Now, if that project goes just completely south, or for whatever number of other reasons, it may not be a video, but I'm gonna really try. I'm gonna really try and make that a video. Now, others, just tires. Yeah, when this thing had dry rotted mismatched tires on it. So yeah, this thing was just super sketchy. It wouldn't hook. It kept trying to break loose, even just going around corners. Like, okay, forget it. This thing is just a death trap. So I did finally put new tires on all around. And these are, I don't know if you'll see. Yeah, you can sort of see it. The Nitto 555 G2s. I mean, I was just looking for what I thought was going to be a good all-around performance tire. Because, I mean, Sure, this car may see some drag strip, some autocross tracks, but I'm realistic. 99% of the time, this is just going to be driven on the street. So that's what I was looking for. These tires are fantastic. Now, granted, I was coming from mismatched dry rotted tires, but man, did these things make a difference. It hooks, steers, corners. I still have some chassis work to do to tighten everything up, but man, this car just about drives like a modern car, and it really, really rides good. Okay, sorry, I forgot to open the trunk and I had to go inside and grab my keys. So in here, yeah, okay, maybe I'll show that better when we get inside. But the stereo is finished. I did get all that done, tuned up. Everything's good to go, ready to rock, ready to completely blow your eardrums out. Sounds fantastic inside the car. And the way definitely he designed it, because he was big audiophile too. I still need to clean up the wiring. Hoping you can see all that. But everything's baffled. I built a board that mounts behind the back seat, and I mounted all the amps to it. I obviously need to clean up the wiring. This is just kind of the rough end, but I'll get all this cleaned up and make all that nice and pretty later. As far as the trunk, well, wrapped up in here right now, that's the fire extinguisher. I just don't have a better place to put it, and I didn't want it rattling around, obviously, and damaging either the wheel or the fire extinguisher. I do plan on putting that inside the car. I just haven't, again, more projects, haven't gotten to that yet. And I did a video about how I put this tray in here for the spare tire, which has been nice because, you know, it has little cubbies and pockets and stuff in it, but it's also putting the tire in the middle of the trunk, which limits space on the sides. So I'm still debating if I want to continue this route or if I want to put the spare tire in its original location. So still working that out, still working the pros and cons on that one. Oh, and this wheel is this is another front wheel that's on the car. Because the front wheels are a little skinnier, so obviously I can put a front wheel on the back, but not a back wheel on the front. That makes sense. The rear wheels are too wide to fit on the front and still turn. Okay, so excuse me. So I still need to figure that out. Okay, I'm going inside. Again, and the seat upholstery shot. There's no carpet, but I've actually made quite a bit of headway. The steering column. This thing has been fighting me. There's a bunch of parts inside that have just completely failed, and as far as I can tell, those parts are unobtainium. So I've kind of band-aided the steering column so that I can still drive the car, but I have a lot of work I need to do to fix it right, which I'm going to do, but I still quite haven't figured out how I'm going to do that yet. So that's to be continued. That's going to be a big job, and also maybe one's going to be hard to film. If I can, I will. But I'm either going to have to do a full rebuild on that steering column, or I'm going to have to swap it for either a rebuilt one or an aftermarket column or something. I still need to figure out what that's going to look like. Okay, now the other stuff. And if you've ever seen any of my other videos, there's actually some interior in here, including an Alcantara headliner. This came out. This is a big job. There's quite a few videos on YouTube about doing headliners in these bow style cars, and I watched every single one of them because I didn't feel comfortable doing it, but I said, you know what, the heck with it, I'm going to give it a go. Now, this headliner was part of what my brother had in his parts pile, so he had already bought the headliner, so I just did the job of putting it in. And I couldn't be happier with the way it came out. Now, obviously, I'm not a professional. I honestly had no idea what I was doing, but I mean, I actually know my way around cars. I know my way, clearly, I know my way around upholstery, and I can do a little sewing and stuff, so I know kind of how to pull fabrics and get them to do what you want them to do. And the kit did come with, well, not just the sail panels, which are obviously in the car, but fabric to recover the visors which are otherwise in fantastic shape, a fantastic original shape. These are original. And thing is, I could recover them. Problem is, there's a lot of material you have to sew through, and I just know I'm going to be busting needles in the machine to try and do it. So it's just a couple of visors. I'd be surprised, considering I have the visors. They're in great shape. I already have the material to recover them. There's a great upholstery shop in town, and I can't imagine it'd be more than maybe $100 or so to get those recovered. So I'll probably just hire that one out. But yeah, I'll tell you a couple of tricks I did do on this headliner though. And it's just stuff that I did along the way as I was learning. One, when I took everything off, because obviously there's no headliner up here before. The old headliner was already torn down. As I took everything off, the dome light, the seatbelt bracket, the visors, and everything else, I put the screws back in. And then once the headliner was done, and this made me nervous, don't get me wrong, when everything was done, I would feel around, find the screw, and then using a soldering iron, gently burn a hole where the screw was. I did that for every location. So, one, burning a hole is better than cutting, honestly, because if you cut, then that is the location where the headliner can and will rip, or it can rip if it's going to. But if you burn a smooth hole, you lose that stress concentration point. So, and a lot of people will even tell you that, not just for headliners, but carpets. You want to burn your hole. And so I did that. But with the screws there, I was able to make sure I burned that hole in exactly the location I wanted. And that worked fantastic. Everything's exactly where it needed to be. The holes weren't too big. Everything's covered up by all the brackets and everything. Worked out great. Now the trim, sorry, this is close quarters, I know. But that's probably one of the reasons why I didn't film. So when I pulled and clipped, and then pulled and clipped again, and pulled and clipped again, probably 4 times, just to make sure I had everything nice and tight. Then came time for the contact cement. Now I know a lot of people will use spray contact cement on that metal piece down here, and then reclip and get everything repulled and all that to get it glued into place. But they're also talking about how messy it was and getting overspray, and now everything has glue all over it and you got to tape everything off. And that, I don't know, so I felt like there was a better way to do it. And this was my solution. Liquid contact cement with the brush built in the cap. And this worked fantastic. I just found this at the big box store locally. Here, for me, it was Lowe's. I mean, I'm sure it shows up at Home Depot, Menards, Builder Square, whatever you got around you. And as I brushed it on, I didn't brush it on so heavy it was dripping, but I did get it on nice and thick. And I didn't really wait for it to tack. I went ahead and pulled the fabric and reclipped it. And then did that all the way around. And that worked beautifully. I mean, I'd come back the next day, pull the clips off to put this trim on, and the headliner didn't move. It worked great. And then putting these on is a pain, but a little coaxing with a rubber mallet worked great. So that got all that in. And then again, in a bit of a different than recommendation, I didn't trim the excess off until after all this trim was on. Then I trimmed off the excess with the X-Acto knife. Just kind of followed the trim along and just trimmed off all the excess. And as you can see, whether, hey, if it's wrong, is it really a dumb idea? But hey, what can I say? It worked. All right, repositioning myself one last time. This should be the last update for this video. I know I'm getting long, but I'm just trying to get everybody caught up. So when I was getting ready to do the headliner, I would of course roll down the window so I could have more room to work. And this particular window, as I did, the glass fell in the cavity. Wonderful. So now these interior panels weren't on the car. So at least that helped. So long story short, there's a 3 rollers on this window that guided up and down. So that center roller just crumbled, and it got the window off kilter. So I was struggling with that, trying to figure out how the best way to do that was. But I marked the locations of all the bolts, since that's where the adjustment is. Took everything apart, left it inside the cavity, kind of gently let it kind of fall down in the bottom, and then worked the glass out. And then changing the roller out, which I was able to find replacement rollers, had to drill it out, which was unnerving to make sure I could drill it out very carefully without damaging the nut or breaking the glass. That took me a couple of days of gentle persuasion in order to get that roller off. So anyway, got the new one on, worked the glass back in, patience and a little swearing helps. Patience, get that all back in there and get it all lined up and reassembled in the cavity. I found that to be the easiest way to do it. Get everything sort of close, check my marks on all the bolts, tighten it up, and kabam. Everything works great. Lines up exactly where it needs to, including with the door. So, and then of course putting the interior panels on, again with screws that I didn't have, so I had to figure out what they were. But I was able to get all that figured out and get it all screwed in. And of course this will have to come out again when I go put in the carpet, but I'll have to take the seats out anyway, so yeah, that's okay. It's really not that hard to get this stuff off. So I think that is it for the update. Well, I hope you get something out of this video. Hopefully maybe it'll help you with some of your projects. I do plan on, of course, making more videos on this car. There's just so much to do. Any of you know, you have these older cars, you fix one thing, 2 other things break. It's kind of where I am. I see, yeah, some of you nodding your heads. You know exactly what that's like. So I'll wrap this up here, and I hope you have an awesome day. See ya.